Hi all, it's Dr. Rebecca Barrett-Fox here, your professor for Sociology 3463 Collective Behavior. In this video, I want to give you a tour of our Blackboard site because it's a little different than some other courses are set up. I'd encourage you by now to have read this syllabus and maybe even have a copy of it near you so you can see how the syllabus matches up to how we're set up. So when you enter our course, you'll come to our course homepage. There's a welcome message from me. It's about 3 minutes long, and please watch it because it introduces some of the key concepts of the course. Our course description, learning objectives, and my contact information. This is also in the syllabus, of course. Here's my office phone number, but really the best and fastest way to get in contact with me is through email. And you can expect that I'll respond to emails within 48 hours, Monday through Friday. I'm also available for Skype, Zoom, or phone meetings if that's more useful to you. Next, you'll see our spot for announcements. You should really sign up to have the announcements delivered directly to your email. You can do a quick YouTube search to figure out how to do that by searching for, I think, something like Blackboard Learn and announcements to email. That should explain that process to you. Each Thursday, I will send out an announcement about the work that's coming up. As a reminder, your work in class is almost always due on Sundays by 11:59. The exceptions for that are the last week of classes. All our AOS classes do end on a Friday. So for the last week of classes ending on October 5th, the class will be due then, or the final work for the course will be due then. Also on Labor Day weekend, we have a little, I want you to have a genuine weekend, so we're not going to have work due on Sunday. We'll have it due the following Tuesday. Then we've got a calendar. I love this function in Blackboard. You can click on, you have a list here of all your classes. You can see all your due dates for all your classes at once, color-coded by class, or you can click on a particular class and see just the due dates for that course. There is one kind of work here that will not show up on the calendar for our class, and that is work in discussion board. And so none of your due dates for discussion board will show up. That is because Blackboard is not powerful enough, doesn't give me the right tool to set a due date for responses to discussion posts. And so since you're going to post your idea for your discussion board post, remembering if you read the syllabus, you see that you're going to pick a social movement or collective behavior, and you're going to find 6 articles, 1 article per week except for the last week of class, news article, news item to put in there. You're also going to use that same topic for your article, your peer-reviewed articles that you have to find 3 of, and it'll be the topic actually for your essay for your final. The final includes a long essay, and the social movement or collective behavior you choose will be the focus of that question, that long essay on your final. And so in discussion board, you're going to come back each week again, except for the last week, to the original post you made, hit reply, and add a new news item. In order for us to be set up for you to do that, I can't add a due date to it. So what you're going to have to remember is that by every Sunday, you need to submit a new news item, and you need to also respond with a question to 2 peers' news items, the news items that they've posted that week. I also put a reminder of this each week in announcements. So I'm telling you now, it's in the syllabus, and you'll see it in announcements. So that's the best I can do. We've got our syllabus here. Yeah. A little bit about me. As many of you know me from other classes. My research areas are in social movements, particularly conservative political movements, hate groups, and terrorism and extremist groups and extremist behaviors. And I especially have interests in race, class, gender, sexuality, and religion. So I think those are all fascinating topics to talk about. Of course, they're the things we don't talk about in polite company, but we really need research on, I think. And so I'm privileged to get to do research in that area. If you're interested in those topics, I encourage you to follow me at my blog, Any Good Thing. I list there also my academic publications, but this blog is a place where I kind of present a lot of what I write about to a lay audience. So an educated but smart audience, but maybe not experts in the field. And I also co-author a blog at 606 where I talk more narrowly about religion and politics and culture. And so if you're interested in this work, those would be great places to go. And if you are interested in this work, please let me know, because I'm interested in what the work that you're doing as well. The orientation and program information tabs over here focus on the AOS program and the CSG program within the AOS program. Then we've got spots under here for the work that you're doing this semester. Your small assignments this semester, there are 4 of them. One is introduction of yourself to your peers and to me. The plagiarism statement acknowledgement is your opportunity to review the plagiarism statement and sign off on it so that we know that we're all in the same place with plagiarism. There's a syllabus quiz. It's 25 questions over the syllabus. You should use your syllabus while you take it. So read the syllabus first, take this tours because I cover some of the same material that's in the syllabus. Then go ahead and do that syllabus quiz. You do get to take it up to 2 times. So really do your best. It'll be the second score, not necessarily the highest that's recorded. Then finally at midterm, I'm going to ask you to record a brief video, just 10 to 15 seconds, in response to a specific question I ask. So the whole thing shouldn't take more than 20 minutes to think about the question. I would suggest writing out an answer, practicing it, recording it, and uploading it. I'm interested in your answer to this question. It's a way for me to measure what you're learning, but it's also a way for me to validate your identification, which is something I have to do in this class. And so while it's a little bit of a hassle to do an assignment this way, I think it's a lot easier than the other ways I could authenticate your identity, like through ProctorU or something like that. So that's why we do that. The next spot is for chapter notes. For each chapter in the book that we read, read 1 or 2 chapters per week, you're going to take notes. These are very open-ended how you format your notes. Some folks like to list keywords and definitions. Some folks like bullet points. Some people like bullet journals that are much more flexible. How you do it is up to you, but I'd like to see 750 words at least per chapter. And the idea here is that when you write about what you're reading, you learn it better. And that is proven true over and over again in research. If you're a good student, you probably already do this. And if you haven't done this before, it's going to bolster your grade for this class because it is worth 40% of your grade. That's the biggest portion of your grade. But also, it helps you learn the material better. That's really the goal. And that means when the final comes around, you're going to be better prepared. You're going to know it better. And triple bonus, you get to use the notes on the final. So read it, understand it better because you're taking notes, and then have the notes to use on the final, which you're already better prepared for because you took notes. So that is how those assignments work. And again, those are due always, except for that around Labor Day, always on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Then next, 20% of your grade comes from this discussion board project. You're going to choose one topic, one collective behavior or social movement, and you're going to stick with it all semester. You're going to post in discussion board, a post with the subject line of whatever group, whatever collective behavior or social movement it is that you're studying. Then each week, by Sunday at 11:59, you're going to come back and post a news article from a reputable news source, and I provide some information about what counts as a reputable news source here. You're going to put a reputable news source talking about this social movement or collective behavior. So over the course of the semester, you're going to come up with 6 items. You're also going to come back each week to the discussion board and look at the items your peers have shared. You might decide that you're going to follow one person or one collective behavior or social movement and learn a lot more about it. Read the articles, ask them some genuine questions. Those questions will help them generate new key terms, think about the topic differently, maybe push their thinking in a little bit different direction, and really help them engage their material better. It's okay if you and a peer or a classmate choose the same topic, that's fine, but you can't choose the same articles. So if you choose, let's say, the marriage equality movement and so does somebody else, you're going to want to make sure that each week you're putting in different articles. And so if you put in the same article, the person who put it in first, I'll give them credit for it, and the person who put it in second, I will not give them credit for it. So I want you to find articles that no one else in the class is using. On that same collective behavior or social movement, you are going to locate 3 peer-reviewed articles, journal articles about the topic. So they have to be peer-reviewed. So Time Magazine, not peer-reviewed. New York Times, not peer-reviewed. Great sources for news, but not peer-reviewed scholarship. And it has to be a journal article. So if it's a government report, that's not peer-reviewed. Has to be a journal article. If you're confused about what a peer-reviewed journal article is, I got you covered here. I've got 3 videos that I created. I'm a little obsessed with this because it's really important to me. 3 articles that videos that I've created. 1 explaining what a peer-reviewed source is, 2 showing you how to find them in Arkansas at Arkansas State University, and 3 showing you how to cite them in APA style, because that's what you've got to do. Don't fall for claims from things like Zotero or EndNotes, or Microsoft Word has a function where it will tell you it'll do your bibliography for you. It never does them correctly. Also, when you find your article at the library, sometimes the article itself will have a citation on it. And it'll say, well, this is how you cite it in APA style. It's wrong. I wish it were right, but it's almost always wrong. You can't, if you're doing 3 citations, at least 2 of them will be significantly wrong, and probably all 3 of them will be wrong. So you just have to do it by hand. Here are the sources you can use to help you cite. You can use the APA handbook. Now, most undergraduates don't actually own that. You might own, though, however, the composition handbook that you purchased for English, your introductory English class. That would be a good source. If you don't have either of those, the one I use over and over is the Purdue University Online Writing Lab. It has a fantastic resource. It's the only one I trust, where they show you how to cite and they give you models. And so go to the Purdue OWL Labs APA page. I've linked it right here, and work on citation that way. Of course, you've also got my video, so you should be pretty well set up to do to create an APA bibliography. So because you got so much support in this, I grade it very seriously. So even little errors get marked off. This isn't something that you get to do a second time. And so don't waste the effort you put into finding good articles. If you do that, that's the hardest part. Finding a good article and reading it is the hardest part. Citing it correctly is tedious. I'm not going to lie, it's tedious. But don't lose points over it when you've done the hard work. Then later on in the semester, you're going to take notes. Again, 750 words, really any format that you like over each of your articles. That's going to strengthen your knowledge of the social movement that you're studying. Why do you want to do that? Because your final exam has 3 components. It has an objective portion, it has a short answer, and it has a long essay. And the long essay, I'm telling you right now, the question is, apply a particular theory that we learn about this semester to the social movement or collective behavior that you have studied. So everybody in the class, even if you all study different collective behaviors, will be prepared to apply a theory to it. Why will you be prepared? Because you've taken chapter notes from the book, so you understand the book well, and you can use those notes in writing your paper. This is a timed essay, so you've got 2.5 hours to get this thing done. You've read about your social movement or collective behavior in the news, and you've read what scholars have to say about it. So rather than having you write a research paper at the end of the course, I'm having you do the research that goes into writing a research paper so you can write a really well-informed essay at the end. So the other part of the final is that the short answer question you're going to be fine for. So just to back up a second, to prepare for the final, what you're going to want to do is take good notes over the book, select worthwhile news articles that really help you understand the collective behavior or social movement you're studying, and take good notes in your articles. Then you're really going to be set up for success there. The other thing you have to do is watch some videos. It's under 5 hours of videos total for the class. So under an hour a week. The longest one is 2 hours long. And so these should be pretty doable. You don't have to take notes on them. You don't have quizzes over them. And I'm not monitoring when you do them. I do suggest that you do 1 or 2 a week so that you get them done in a timely way. If you push them all off to the end, it'll probably be a little bit painful and not as useful to you because I have them paired with concepts that you'll be reading about. So I suggest in our video library when you should be watching them. And I also state this in the announcements, so make sure you're signed up for those announcements. Our first 2 lectures are from, our first 2 videos are from Dr. Joe Rukas at Arkansas State University, and he's talking about elements of social movements and types of collective behavior, ways that we can kind of organize collective behavior into a typology. After that, we begin a focus on race and collective behavior and social movements in the U.S. I want to say there are a lot of worthwhile social movements and collective behavior case studies that deserve our attention. And I think it'd be fascinating if we did nothing but read case studies and examples. But our book is pretty kind of geared towards the theory. And it's an older book. It's a classic book in the field, but that means it doesn't incorporate the kind of examples I would like to see. So we're going to use these videos to help illustrate examples. And I chose to focus them on a single topic, the topic of race, because I think we'll build up our content knowledge a little bit faster than if we were scattered across different kinds of social movements or different topics. So we look here with a variety of kinds of social movements. So I used the word typology before. Typology is a way of organizing social movements. So is it reactionary? Is it a panic? Is it a riot? How can we organize the examples that we're looking at? So what I want to make very clear at the start is that the examples we look at, some of them are bad examples. They're examples of social movement and collective behavior that's reprehensible. And so I'm not including the goal here is not 2 sides to every story. The goal is not a false equivalency, saying that 2 things are similar. There are not fine people on both sides of the issue of racism. Racism is always wrong. Hate is always wrong. Oppression of people is always wrong. And the U.S. has a long history of racial oppression of non-whites. And so I'm going to ask you to watch, for example, a film about Martin Luther King and also one about neo-Nazis. They're not equivalent. They're not in conversation with each other, right? There's a good guy and a bad guy here. So please don't think, as you see the examples that I draw from, that I'm trying to make some argument there's equivalencies. There's not equivalencies. Why I'm choosing these is to illustrate the variety of ways that people engage in collective behavior and social movements. So we are going to move across history, and I've paired these historical examples as we kind of move from the past to the present with the concepts we're learning about in church. So we start in 1830 with Nat Turner. You might know of Nat Turner's rebellion. He was one of many people who organized a slave rebellion during the colonial and antebellum, that is before the Civil War period. We don't even know how many slave rebellions there were because white slaveholders really worked very hard to put them down and contain them, because if the threat of a slave rebellion got out, that would embolden other people to try it. But we do know, in fact, there was over 480 slave rebellions on the slave ships alone. So this is people collectively, that's right, you can't have a rebellion all by yourself, you got to have other people collectively coming together to make their world more right, to fight against their oppression, in these cases using violence. Now, not all social movement, not all collective behavior does that, but certainly that would have been a tool that people in leading slave rebellions would have embraced. Of course, they were, in terribly violent situations, so that was a sensible solution. Nat Turner was one of these. And this documentary, it has some violence in it, some references to violence and some reenactments of violence. So I probably wouldn't show it to a younger viewer, but by late middle school or junior high, it's probably appropriate to watch. So maybe not safe for work or not safe if you're, got your young kids at home. Then we move ahead in time to right before the Civil War with John Brown, who leads the effort, again using violence, to attack Harper's Ferry. His goal is to arm abolitionists and specifically to arm African Americans to overcome slavery. Is this a social movement? Would it have been a social movement if he had been successful, if not caught? And how do we tell this story? So how do we socially construct the idea of a social movement? What's the difference between a rebellion, a revolution, a moment, a movement? Kind of depends on the bigger purpose of the story. So who's telling the story and for what purpose? So I want to start illustrating that idea. That film is just 13 minutes long. Let me move ahead again farther in closer in time to 1930 in Marion, Indiana, to a lynching. Now, lynching is not a social movement, but it's an act of mass mob violence. That's a collective behavior. And so sociologists are very interested in what happens when people turn into mobs. At what point do people move from individual behavior to mob behavior? What does that look like? And what happens? What are the social theories that make mobs happen? So we're going to look at this, and we're going to specifically look at the context of the U.S., where so much of our mob violence has been directed towards people of color. And so this story is actually told by, there are 3 targets in the lynching, and one of them escaped, and so it's told by the man who escapes. Again, further in time, not a documentary, but a fictionalized account of true events, the film Selma. This is the one item in our course that I am going to ask you to purchase. It's not available for streaming through Blackboard. Everything else is free. This one you're going to have to rent or stream or borrow from the library. We've got plenty of time to get that done. And it tells the true story of the events in Selma, Alabama, in 1965, and efforts there to work for civil rights. Then we skip ahead even further, really close to 2017. This is a brand new documentary just out this summer from PBS, and it's about the Unite the Right rally that happened last summer in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the University of Virginia is, as white nationalists gathered for months in advance of this rally to agitate and express sentiments of white nationalism. And so this is a hard documentary to watch, because the other ones we can oftentimes make excuses and say, well, that was then, times were different. And of course, those are all excuses. We've always known that this was wrong. But certainly post-slavery and post-Holocaust, we know that white supremacy is wrong and deadly, and yet we see it rising in the country right now. And so we'll think about what do crowds look like here, what do mobs look like here, and what do movements look like here. Then we end with what I think is a hopeful note, a documentary about Black Lives Matter movement called Stay Woke. This is a 40-minute documentary, so not too long, about the Black Lives Matter movement. I say it's hopeful. Of course, Black Lives Matter starts with a sad story, a story about continued police brutality and mass incarceration of African Americans. And it extends beyond that. The Black Lives Matter movement is intersectional. It's deliberately and explicitly concerned about LGBTQ people and people with disabilities, but it forwards and draws our collective attention to issues of police brutality, and is deliberate in its strategies to both make sense of but not really copy earlier civil rights movements. So it's really innovative in its tactics and in its strategies. And so we'll end with, again, a very contemporary example of a social movement. So you'll find all of those in our video library. You'll need to watch them at your own pace. But again, I do suggest 1 week. It won't be more than an hour, except for that one for Selma, any particular week. And that'll get you ready for the final. The other things you'll see on Blackboard are a spot where you can email your classmates if you have a question, and of course, check your grades. That is our tour of Blackboard. If you have questions about how Blackboard operates or what you see here, please let me know.